Hello and welcome to episode 81 of Tall Guy Talks Travel with Rick Doherty. Of course, I am your host, Rick Doherty. On today's show, Marisa from Chicago will be joining me to revisit our conversation from very early on in the history of the podcast. We're going to be talking about Epic Universe, the new theme park being built at Universal Orlando Resort. While we've talked about this already, we have so much more information and in some cases, just reliable rumors about what is going to be happening at Epic Universe. Before we get started, I'm reminding everyone about my fundraising efforts for CASA of Pinellas County, Florida. CASA is a respected domestic violence charity in the St. Petersburg area of Florida. They really help women and children who are in a tough situation become survivors of abuse. Even if you go to a Tampa Bay Rays baseball game, you'll notice CASA has helpline numbers in the bathrooms. They're in the men's, women's, and gender-neutral bathrooms at Tropicana Field. Going to dozens of baseball games per year when I was a kid, something as simple as that may have given me the courage to reach out for help when I didn't know where to turn. They are truly trying to help people. In June, I completed a pilgrimage on Ireland's National Famine Way to raise money and awareness for CASA. Please donate at casapinellas.org/walkwithrick/. That's casapinellas.org/walkwithrick/. Also on Monday, you can get the fourth vlog from my pilgrimage, as it will air on the Tall Guy Talks Travel with Rick Doherty YouTube channel. I'm trying a lot of different things to get the fundraiser in front of as many people as possible. It would mean a lot to me if you took a few minutes to send a little money to CASA. There are no middlemen or processing fees. The money goes directly to CASA. Now let's welcome our good friend Marisa from Chicago. Thanks for being here, Marisa.
Thanks for having me.
So some exciting stuff going on in the Orlando theme park world, and that is that Universal Orlando Resort is moving forward very, very quickly. If you're going to compare them to Walt Disney World building things, they're basically going at light speed at this point, building the brand new theme park, Epic Universe. We talked very early on in the podcast about this, and we were dealing with mostly rumors. We're going to be dealing with some rumors today on this episode. We're going to talk about some things that are not confirmed, but we're also going to be dealing with a lot of the very, very great reporting from Alicia Stella from Orlando Park Stop. She has been all over the construction of Epic Universe. She's been dealing with permit filings. She's looking at aerial views, aerial photography. She is just absolutely all over this. So first of all, we want to give her credit for her great reporting. I also want to give her credit because back in June, she raised a lot of money for the Trevor Project, which is a cause that is very close to her heart. And it's always nice when there are good people in this community because sometimes there are some not so great people in this community. But anyway, we are going to start talking about Epic Universe and the rumors that have almost been confirmed and some of them that have been confirmed. The one that we absolutely know, even Universal is not hiding this, is Super Nintendo World. This is going to be a game changer. If the Wizarding World of Harry Potter was Universal's volley, and then Walt Disney World volleyed back with Star Wars Galaxy's Edge. This is, I don't know if it's going to be a spike at the net, but this is going to be a really good return volley on the part of Universal. Super Nintendo World has already been opened overseas, and it just looks incredible. What are your thoughts on this land?
I can't wait for this land. This is, like you were saying, it's a nice return volley to Galaxy's Edge, and it's one that at this point, I don't think Disney can top. It looks incredible. The level of immersion, if they can pull off what they've pulled off in Japan and here in Orlando, it's going to be amazing. It looks like you've stepped into a Mario game. And there are little moving pieces and little details and little immersive aspects throughout the land in Japan where there's little like question mark boxes that you can hit to get coins. All of these little things that create an experience that seems like it's going to be on an entirely different level to anything we've seen in the United States so far.
We are definitely going to have more conversations about Star Wars Galaxy's Edge in the future. We're going to talk about that a lot. It is a very controversial topic. But even in a recent episode, we mentioned how when Star Wars Galaxy's Edge first opened, it was a must. Every time you were basically at Walt Disney World, not even at Hollywood Studios, like you would make your way to Hollywood Studios to do Star Wars Galaxy's Edge. But now that it's been open for 3 years, I find a lot of new visitors are definitely enjoying it and definitely getting the most out of it. But it doesn't tend to have that return ability for guests like myself, where I get to go basically all the time. Yes, I'm spoiled. Marisa, who gets to go a few times a year, who is also frankly spoiled. This looks like it is going to have not only that awe factor the first time you go, but because of the rides involved, or at least the rides we think are going to be involved, it does look like it is going to have that repeatability that maybe doesn't exist at Star Wars Galaxy's Edge.
Yeah, I agree. It looks like they've really thought out not only how to draw people in for the first visit, but how to keep drawing people in. And I do have to say, this is something that I think Universal does really well with their themed lands. I think the Wizarding World lands does this as well, where there's just so much immersion and little nooks and crannies and things to explore, and quite frankly, really great themed shops that it keeps you coming back even if you've ridden the rides multiple times before. So now the Super Nintendo Land is going to take that and add rides where there's already one ride that's confirmed. That's going to be basically a Mario Kart ride. So not only are you going to have this incredibly themed land, now you're going to have a ride that can be different every single time you ride it based on how you steer or the things you get in the ride. So I really think it's going to be something that even repeat visitors will see as a must-do.
Because I know whether it be the Wizarding World of Harry Potter at the Universal parks that already exist or at Star Wars Galaxy's Edge, one of my favorite things is going with people who are going for the first time. And I know that this Super Nintendo World is going to be something that every time I go with somebody who's visiting from, an old friend from Pennsylvania or something like that, every time I'm just going to be staring at their face as they enjoy this. They can't mess up this land. They have to nail this land down because this is going to be the anchor for the entire park.
Absolutely. It completely is. And this is the land that's so anticipated, that everyone has such high expectations for, that they really have to get it completely right to impress everyone and keep those high standards met. And I also think something that I noticed, I was watching, because I can't stay spoiler free for this long when I know that there's a Super Nintendo Land out there in the world already. I can't do it. It's too tempting. But I noticed that there are a lot of moving pieces in the Japan Super Nintendo Land. There's a lot of little bits that move and rotate and spin. And that's just something that I found interesting because that's going to be very costly in upkeep and repairs. And that's such a huge element of the land that it's something that they're going to have to be really on top of, making sure all those elements are working all the time.
Nintendo obviously being one of the best IPs to bring into a new land, to be the anchor of a brand new theme park. I'm, let's just say it, middle-aged. So I'm not 100% down with the youths, if you know what I'm saying. So I wonder, is How to Train Your Dragon a big enough IP to warrant the size of the land we're seeing on some of these projections? Because it looks cool, and we're not 100% sure. It appears from some of the concept art that there's going to be a dueling roller coaster, much like the dueling roller coaster that used to be at Universal's Islands of Adventure. I don't think we know yet if that's going to be a How to Train Your Dragon dueling roller coaster, even though that would very much make sense, or if that is going to be a separate roller coaster that's not necessarily themed to any of the lands surrounding it. But is How to Train Your Dragon, in your opinion, an IP that can warrant a land this size?
That's a great point. I think it certainly was very popular. I don't know. I think it has lasting value. Like, people who watched it and enjoyed it will still be excited. And I think that the concept of flying on a dragon is exciting enough that people who maybe don't really relate to the IP or don't really care about the IP are still going to want to ride a ride that makes it look like you're flying on a dragon. However, I have to say I'm a little surprised that they're moving forward with an entire land and that they haven't changed it to something like Minions, which just had a new movie and is somehow still has this like major chokehold on everyone, because that's a huge, huge property that they could have done something with as well. So I'm interested that they're continuing How to Train Your Dragon, but I'm happy about it because I liked that movie.
You very much led exactly where I was going next, because I was going to say how over at Universal Studios Florida, they just took down Shrek 4D, and we don't have 100% confirmation, but basically we're assuming that that's going to be more Minions. Like, if Shrek wasn't culturally relevant enough anymore, if Back to the Future and Ghostbusters weren't culturally relevant enough anymore for Universal, Jaws, like, these are all very, very big IPs that you would imagine should still be around in theme parks, and they got rid of them. But How to Train Your Dragon is one that they think is going to have that lasting impact. Now, I do understand what you're saying, and it doesn't matter if you care about Jurassic Park. I've actually never seen a Jurassic Park movie, but I can enjoy the Jurassic Park land in Universal's Islands of Adventure because it's dinosaurs and everybody likes dinosaurs. So I could almost see this being like Pandora over at Disney's Animal Kingdom, where people who've never even seen Avatar or don't care about Avatar can enjoy the rides, because if the rides are done well, the IP really doesn't matter. But this is a movie that you really liked and you're excited to see a land based on it?
Yeah, I am. I really enjoyed it when it came out. It's something I've seen a couple times. Yeah, I'm excited to see a land based on it. But I do think what you said about Avatar is very interesting because, in my opinion, I think this is Universal's direct response to Avatar. They saw Disney make a land that's hugely successful, where the main flagship ride of that land is you getting on the back of a dragon-like creature and going through a flight simulation. And they said, hey, we've also got this property that features really cool landscapes and where you can get on the back of an actual dragon, not just a dragon creature, a dragon, and we can take you through these flights and make it look like you're flying. And it's really cool. And people will like that because people don't care about Avatar, but they still show up to Pandora in droves. So I do think that that was their mentality behind it. And we'll see how that pans out.
And another reason that comparison to Pandora is so apt, and this is getting into a lot of the Orlando theme park world politics and everything. Originally, at Disney's Animal Kingdom, there was going to be Beastly Kingdom, which is where Pandora, the World of Avatar, is right now. That land was going to have a dueling roller coaster ride. When they scrapped that idea, a bunch of the Imagineers, who ended up losing their jobs at Disney, went over to Universal, built the dueling roller coaster ride over at Universal. So there's just a lot of interconnectedness to putting that ride there, especially if it's trying to be the answer to Pandora.
I didn't know that, but that is fascinating and makes a whole lot of sense.
And I don't know how any of these new Avatar movies are going to perform at the box office, but if they bomb, I want Pandora turning into Araya and the Last Dragon Land, but we'll talk about that in a future episode. One lasting IP that Universal is definitely taking advantage of in this theme park, and one of the things about building a brand new theme park is you want it to still feel classic and you want it to feel like Universal. And that is why the best decision they made, even better than Super Nintendo World, is the Universal Monsters Land. This is such a good decision because it is immediately going to make a brand new theme park seem timeless. It is going to tie in to the most infamous property, the most, not even infamous, famous property that Universal owns. It has the potential to pull Halloween Horror Nights to a different location. I'm not putting words in their mouth, but it has the potential to do that. And it just feels so Universal. Universal is, while kids are definitely welcome and kids can enjoy it, it is more of a theme park that I think starts when you're 12 or 13 more than when you're 5 or 6. And Universal Monsters just is hitting the nail on the head in theming.
Oh, it's going to be amazing. I mean, there's no doubt in my mind that Universal is going to go all out with their classic Monsters Land. It's going to be so cool. And I know one of the things the article mentioned was that it looks like there is going to be a ride in this land that's got the same ride system as Forbidden Journey, but it doesn't look like there's going to be any of those screens. So now this is me purely speculating. Okay, there's no basis for this, but my immediate thought when I read that was a haunted house where you're going through and you have physical monsters all around you, and you've got this ride hydraulic system that's moving you and twisting you and turning you as you go through the house and try to evade these monsters, and they're popping up at you at different places. I am a notorious wimp. I would love that ride. That would be such a cool experience. I think regardless of if they do that or they go in a totally different direction, it's going to turn out amazing because, again, Universal knows how to do monsters. But I just think that that's a really cool potential.
Notorious Wimp is definitely like a t-shirt we have to get for Marisa when she's in the parks now. So we're going to move on to something that is obviously you just can't escape it, and it's probably something that Universal is thinking, why can't we just escape this? But they're probably going to be extending the Harry Potter universe or the Wizarding World universe into this theme park. There has been talk about it being something from the Fantastic Beasts series, but then I've even seen a little bit of backtracking on that, like it might actually be like a third Harry Potter land. But with everything that's happening, Universal has all its chips in the middle of the table in this IP. No matter what happens with J.K. Rowling, they are so tied to it economically that they almost have to put something Wizarding World in Epic Universe. But the PR they're going to get for it is just going to be a nightmare. I do not envy Universal being in this spot.
So I have a lot of thoughts on this, which might get some controversy here. So I apologize in advance if that's the case. So my very controversial opinion is obviously Harry Potter has become a cornerstone of the Universal parks. It has become a huge draw for people to go. And I don't think the Universal executives or board for 1 second is upset about it. I don't think they care that there's going to be negative PR because I don't think there will be that much. I think there will be negative PR, and some people will be like, hey, why are you doing this? Rightly so. But I think that they know no matter what goes out in the press, no matter what happens, people are going to the current Wizarding World in droves. And it still is going to happen with the new park, whatever they put there. People are going to flock there because so many people have, which we don't have to get into this, but there's the whole argument of separation of the artist versus the art. I have complicated thoughts on that in this specific property, but so many people have that firm separation where they don't care. Even if what J.K. Rowling has been saying and her beliefs don't align with their own, it still doesn't bother them enough to put up a stink about this park. And Comcast / Universal in general, as we've seen in recent news, tends to, let's just say, push PR in different directions so they don't have to actually answer any potentially messy quagmire questions about their business decisions. So I think they're just preparing for that. They're going to build it. They know it's going to be a success. And you know what? It's probably going to look really darn cool. So they don't care.
This is one of the reasons I love having you on the show, because everything you said made so much sense, and I have about 5 different offshoots from what you just said. First of all, the way that Universal handled all of the controversy a few months ago, that Disney did not escape at all. This isn't even being political, because Disney made both sides of the argument angry with how poorly they handled it. And Universal escaped any questions on that. No matter what J.K. Rowling has done over the past few months, they definitely seem to dodge it like Keanu Reeves in The Matrix. Like, they have a really good way of skirting that. But this is what I want to ask you, and you are a gigantic Harry Potter fan. Sarah says, who's on the show a lot, gigantic Harry Potter fan. Both of you, coincidentally, also good people who are not trash humans like J.K. Rowling. So there is definitely a way to be a fan of Harry Potter and separate it in some way from the actions of J.K. Rowling. What I'm wondering is if this is a Fantastic Beasts land, which would be based on movies that are nowhere near as popular as the Harry Potter movies. Does it then become worth the controversy? Because, yep, Harry Potter, people have decided they love it so much, they don't care. But these Fantastic Beasts movies weren't that big. So A, do you think that it's still worth the negative PR to build a Fantastic Beasts land? Because they still might knock it out of the park. And like we said with Pandora, How to Train Your Dragon, sometimes the IP doesn't have to be huge to knock it out of the park as a theme park land. So A, do you think that's going to be the case? Or B, do you think they just make it a regular Harry Potter land?
I think it's going to become a regular Harry Potter land. I think that Fantastic Beasts was being discussed back when perhaps they were first drafting plans for this land, because it was much larger. It's gotten a lot smaller of a fan base as each consecutive movie comes out. And now there's talk that it might just end as a trilogy. They might not even finish the last 2 like they were originally supposed to. So I think that it's just going to become a regular Harry Potter land, so they can focus on building something that everyone knows and loves in that fandom. I think the most recent rumored report, is that they're going to bring in the Ministry of Magic, which I think is interesting because it's not like it's that iconic of a location, but I think they kind of backed themselves into a corner because they already have Hogsmeade and Diagon Alley and a castle. So they've kind of got the most iconic Harry Potter things already built. So then it's like, well, I guess the Ministry is pretty famous. We can do that. And, there's potential for rides and stuff through that as well, that I think could fare pretty well. So I think that's a lot more likely to happen. And then they can just kind of pretend as time goes on that the Fantastic Beasts experiment perhaps never happened.
Well said. So the one thing I do want to say, and I believe that Marisa is 100% behind me when I say this, we talk about these things on a PR level, and we talk about these things as far as, will people like Marisa, Sarah, still go and see these lands, and they may. But I want everybody to know that we understand that there is a difference between PR and the actual lives of people who are listening to the podcast. And we don't want to make it seem like we are belittling that. We understand that a lot of the things J.K. Rowling has done are very, very hurtful to people who listen to this podcast, or maybe you don't listen to this podcast, but that doesn't mean that we don't still care about you. So we're talking about them on a theme park level, but understand that we support you if you are dealing with hard things, and we don't think that the PR aspect is the only thing that's important in these conversations.
Yep, 100% absolutely correct. And just to, blanket statement it a little bit, we absolutely do not agree with J.K. Rowling's views, do not agree with them, do not support them. And yeah, that's all.
Correct. And I also don't like when religious people get lumped into the conversation, because I think that Marissa and I would both consider ourselves to be fairly religious. I just walked across a country on a pilgrimage that was partially a religious pilgrimage. So sometimes people can be religious and also not hate people. But we're going to move on from that before we get way too controversial. I do think we have built a fairly good community here where people understand that we don't talk about these things a lot, but we only do it when it is 100% necessary, but we will do it when it is 100% necessary. There are going to be hotels here with Epic Universe, and the only thing we really know about them, there are some things like there's going to be a pool building, a pool bar, a pool, a spa, a splash pad, but you knew it was going to have those things before the filings of permits anyway. The concept art for this hotel looks like it's going to be another premier hotel. And I don't know, Marissa, if you have stayed in any of the Universal hotels. Well, first of all, let's ask that question. Have you?
I have actually. When I was a kid, I stayed in Portofino and Royal Pacific, and then I went back, a few years ago now, and stayed in Royal Pacific again. I really love that hotel.
So I am going to say, while the Walt Disney World hotels have a lot of advantages, and there are a lot of things I love about them, Marissa and I have both talked about how much we love Wilderness Lodge. There are others, the Poly. I'm really falling in love with Boardwalk lately. There are some great things about Walt Disney World hotels, but when you just talk about price compared to what you are receiving, the Universal hotels far exceed the Disney hotels in that respect. The value resorts, the endless summer resorts themselves are great. I absolutely love staying in the endless summer resorts. Cabana Bay is also technically a value resort, and we have always gotten it for less than we would have gotten one of the all-star resorts at Walt Disney World whenever we've stayed there. That's a big deal. It is a much better resort, not criticizing the all-stars, but Cabana Bay is a lot better than the all-stars, and to get it cheaper is a big deal. And like you said, some of those fancier resorts at Universal are really, really good. So I'm excited just for this hotel that's going to have theme park view rooms and is probably going to be a place where a lot of us hang out on days we're not even going to theme parks.
Yeah, I think it's going to be incredible. I think the concept art shows it being one of those top tier hotels, which means that, you get this incredible experience, but then you also get Express Pass included with your stay, which is why I've always chosen the spoiled route to stay at those, because I'm there for a limited time. And so that, again, is just another perk rolled into the price of your hotel stay that makes it even more of a bargain to stay at these Universal hotels for everything you're getting. And I think this new one is just going to take that to a new level, just beyond what we've already seen. Of course, we're basing this off concept art. Concept art can always change, but the pools, the hotels with the rooms looking over the theme park, walkability to Epic Universe, all of that is huge.
So it's been a while since you've made Universal a part of your Florida vacations, correct?
Yes, the last time I was there was 2020, but it was just for a day.
So there's one other weird thought that is coming into my mind when it comes to Epic Universe. If you've seen a map of where it's located, it's not that close to the other Universal theme parks. You would have to get on a bus to go to the other Universal theme parks. And Islands of Adventure and Universal Studios Florida are right next to each other, and they're connected by city walks, so you always have something to do in that area. It's not too far away from Volcano Bay. This is going to be a lot further. Do you think that Epic Universe is going to create a lot of 3-4 day Universal vacations? Or do you think it's going to create a lot of 1 day vacations that are a part of a Walt Disney World vacation?
Oh, that's a good question. And I feel like it's very dependent on the traveler and what they want to prioritize. But I will say this, speaking from my own experience, in 2020, I was able to go to Universal for a day with the Express Pass and get everything done that I wanted to. I was able to ride a couple things twice, perfect amount of time, great experience. Throw Epic Universe into the mix, that's not possible. It has to become a 2 day trip because there's going to be so much to do, so much to see. Epic Universe in its own right could become a 2 day trip depending on everything these lands have to offer. You know, if you want to walk around and experience the games in Super Nintendo World, if you want to explore little nooks and crannies in these themed lands, plus go on all the rides, you've got to start blocking out time for an entire Universal vacation, which is going to be a big game changer in the Orlando area.
Like I said, the only way I see this backfiring on Universal is if they end up competing with themselves and sucking away people from Islands of Adventure and Universal Studios Florida to come to Epic Universe. But because it's so far from the other two parks, they almost make Epic Universe that destination for Universal and don't even think about going to the other ones. Now, listen, the Wizarding World of Harry Potter and Velocicoaster, I understand there definitely are still things to draw people there, but if you've been a number of times and you're coming to Orlando with limited time, I could definitely see people doing 1 day at Epic Universe and skipping the rest of Universal, but time will tell on that.
Yeah, that's definitely possible. I wouldn't be surprised to see that happening with seasoned travelers. But I also think that there are a lot of families who maybe are used to the Disney buses and they're used to saying, okay, well, I want to go from, you know, my hotel in the Magic Kingdom area to Animal Kingdom or Epcot. And I know I'm going to be on a bus for my vacation and that's fine because they're providing it. So I think if Universal can kind of get a steady, reliable bus service going, it won't be too big of a deal, but I definitely do think there will be a drop in attendance, at least at first, at Islands and Universal Studios, just because people will want to dedicate that time to Epic Universe.
And Universal has to advertise how good their hotels are compared to Disney when you talk about price. If more people knew about the quality of Cabana Bay, the quality of Portofino, the quality of even Endless Summer Resort, they would be going there and staying there more often, which would make it easier for them to go to all of the Universal parks. I've got one more thing, and this is going to be you thinking through the mind of another person. So, Universal opens Epic Universe. It's as good as everybody thinks. Super Nintendo World blows everyone away, and people are booking vacations months and months and months ahead of time. This theme park is always packed. There are lines for all the rides. They're selling Express Pass. This is the biggest success in years in the Orlando theme park community. Now, you're Bob Chapek in charge of Walt Disney World. How do you try to return that volley? What do you do? Is there anything short of a fifth gate that can compete with Epic Universe if you're Disney?
So I've got two I'm of two minds on this. One, I think it should make Disney feel pressured into building a fifth gate of some kind, I think that that's the correct response. My concern is that it will lead to Disney saying, hey, let's expand Galaxy's Edge. No one really cares about Muppets Courtyard. Let's get rid of that and push Galaxy's Edge all the way out to connect with Star Tours and give people more Star Wars because that's what they want. I could see that happening, and I don't want it to. I would rather have them do something else, but
that is the most typical Disney fan response I've ever heard to a question about the Universal theme parks is, how does this affect the Muppets?
Look, it's a concern, all right? I could see them saying we need space and we don't want to develop new land. This is here. It's going to be cheaper. It's going to be faster. Let's slap some Star Wars on it.
Just what we need is more construction in Hollywood studios for another 4 or 5 years after what we just dealt with recently. Marisa, thank you so much. This is a great conversation. I appreciate it.
I am happy to be here as always. Thanks for letting me chat about it.
This has been episode 81 of Tall Guy Talks Travel with Rick Doherty. We will have another brand new episode of the show next Thursday. Until then, have a great week.